Brian Vefferly is a Saskatoon lawyer and law professor who has been giving us his analysis on the Gerald Stanley trial and its verdict. He joins me now via Skype. Thanks so much for joining me today, Brian.
Thanks, and happy Family Day.
Happy Family Day to you too. What are your thoughts on the judge's decision not to allow cameras during the Gerald Stanley trial?
Well, I think there's much to be taken from his decision in terms of positive for future access for media, and I think there's some guidelines that he provides. Certainly one of the concerns for the Chief Justice in this particular case was the number of interested parties that potentially could be considered: the deputy sheriffs, court staff, the Canadian Bar Association, the Indigenous organizations, legal organizations. There was certainly some desire from the court to hear from some of those other interested parties before making a decision. So ultimately, of course, the Chief Justice denied the request for cameras in the courtrooms, but left it open for future cases like this to have similar applications.
You mentioned a few of the disadvantages of allowing a camera into a trial. Are there any positive outcomes of putting a camera in the trial to let the audience see it?
Well, yeah, definitely. This is not a new issue for North American justice systems, and Canadian justice system is certainly, from the media's perspective, lagging behind, but I think for good reason. There's a lot of competing interests here that we have an open court process in Canada, and similar arguments for having cameras in the courtroom were made in this particular case, and the judge goes through those. There's positives and negatives. In this particular case, obviously with the amount of media attention and hype surrounding the case, and I think judging by the Twitter comments from a number of people, inaccurate statements of what actually occurred in the courtroom appear to be being used for much of the fodder of online debate. The cameras in the courtroom can permit people that weren't able to be in the courtroom to see the evidence, to hear it themselves, and to be able to, I think, make a more educated view of the evidence. That being said, I think the judge in this particular case pointed out that although we have an open court process and the media is very important in that role to permit the public to be educated, we also have an overarching principle of trial fairness, which no doubt can be affected in a case like this.
And I mean, this case did bring a lot of calls for changes to the justice system. Do you think that cameras in this trial might have helped people understand the verdict a little bit better?
Oh, I think that's definitely one of the positives that could come from this. I think that it would be, I would say almost without question, cameras in the courtroom would have assisted that particular part of the issue. One of the concerns that was mentioned by defense counsel is live streaming of arguments and the like can lead to really difficult issues, though, for trial fairness. And that's one of the balancing issues. One of the issues in this particular case was changing and conflicting trial testimony of certain witnesses. And when a trial starts, all the potential witnesses other than the accused are actually removed from the courtroom, and that's usually done by court order at the start of the trial. So none of the witnesses that were supposed to testify would have been able to watch and observe and hear the evidence necessarily. So being able to watch live some of the arguments that were made by counsel could have caused the potential future witnesses to be tampered with to a certain degree or change their testimony. But I think the media outlets would argue there's no difference between Twitter and a camera in the courtroom. And in future cases, I think with enough lead time and enough consideration for all the factors, the Chief Justice's case can actually be used as a precedent for why cameras can be allowed in the courtrooms with the right amount of consultation with various parties.
Thank you so much for your insight on this today, Brian.
Thanks for having me.